Hello, my name is Lainy Thomas, and I'm a junior here at Frisco High School, and this year I was fortunate enough to be part of the ISM program. I've always had a love for sports. Even when growing up, I've played volleyball, basketball, soccer, pretty much anything. And I just always had a love for sports, and in the future I plan to attend the University of Southern California to play beach volleyball, so it's always been a big part of my life. And I've always enjoyed helping others, so I felt like this year I could connect those two things to study orthopedic surgery and sports medicine. My quote for this year is, "We are at our very best and we are happiest when we are fully engaged in work we enjoy on the journey towards the goal we've established for ourselves. It gives meaning to our time off and comfort to our sleep. It makes everything else worthwhile." Earl Nightingale. And I just felt like this quote kind of like resembled what I want to do in the future. Just make sure that I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, and I feel like that's what's going to make me go far in life. So I felt like this quote could help me throughout this year. Just a little background information on ISM. So at the beginning of the year we choose a topic of study, and that's what we're going to be researching and conducting interviews with professionals in our field. And it's a very self-driven class, so whatever you hope to accomplish you can get done if you set your mind to it. And then the second semester we have a mentorship, and you just learn from this mentor, and it's an amazing experience. Some background information on orthopedic surgery is that it consists of injuries involving the musculoskeletal system. So basically it's like prevention, diagnosis, treatment of injuries and disorders of like bones and joints and muscles. For example, some conditions that orthopedic surgeons may treat include arthritis, bone tumors, dislocations, fractures and sprains, and things along those lines. Sports medicine is a subspecialty of orthopedics that deals with athletes' physical fitness and the treatment and prevention of injuries. So within orthopedics there are different subspecialties, sports medicine being one of them. A lot of people who specialize in this field get to work with other athletes and help them through rehab as well as doing the actual surgeries. I chose to learn more about sports medicine because being an athlete, I've been injured myself, so I know what it's like to not be able to play for a while, so I felt like I could relate to this topic and help others. For my research, one topic that I researched was ACL injuries. The ACL, which is the anterior cruciate ligament, stabilizes the knee when pivoting and twisting. So a lot of injuries, or for example, an injury, they're very common in basketball and soccer and things like that. It's a very long treatment process if you hurt the ACL or tear it. With the rise of ACL injuries, doctors have been making new rehab and training programs, such as the Sports Metrics program, which involves stretching, weightlifting, and jump training, and this can decrease landing forces in the knee by 80%. I personally know a few people who've had ACL tears, so I've heard from them like what it's like to experience this, and it's such a long recovery process. So I researched it to learn more about what doctors are doing to shorten the process for rehab. Another topic that I researched was arthroscopic hip surgery. Arthroscopy is a minimally invasive surgical procedure where an arthroscope is inserted into the joint through a small incision. My mentor actually specializes in these type of procedures, so it's cool to learn from him more about them. They are used to help have a shorter rehab process afterwards, and after the surgery you have less time to recover. So more doctors are leaning towards doing these surgeries more than ever now. I also researched more about sports medicine. Many surgeons who specialize in sports medicine work with sports teams ranging from the high school to professional level. So a lot of the times you'll see people who work in sports medicine, they'll also be like trainers for athletic teams, things like that. I also learned more about knee and hip replacements. 1 in 3 knee and hip replacement are in people younger than age 60. So it's becoming more common for younger people to have the need to have a knee or hip replacement. And there's been a rise in people of working out, being more athletic. So that's why these surgeries are becoming more common. It's in such a high demand, so they're creating less invasive procedures. Smaller incisions are helping quicker rehab processes. So in addition to sports medicine, there have been creations of high school clinics or high school trainers helping students who have been injured get back into their sport quicker. Like I said earlier, sports metrics has become more common, which will help athletes recover quicker after injury. For my interviews, my first interview was with Dr. Catherine Coyner. She is the orthopedic surgeon specialized in sports medicine. She was a college athlete, a team physician at Duke University, and many of her patients are athletes. And what I really learned from her is that it takes a lot of dedication to be in this field, and you have to work as hard as you can and know that things aren't going to come easy to you. It was interesting to hear her experiences playing basketball in college, just because she had to balance her workload along with sports in college, and that's something that I will have to do. So it was interesting to be able to relate to her and learn more about that. My second interview was with Dr. Shane Miller. He is a pediatric sports medicine physician. He sees unique cases with children. He teaches students in the clinic, and he creates research and treatment plans for injuries. He was different from all the other people that I interviewed just because he wasn't actually a surgeon. He just specialized in sports medicine, so that's what he mainly focused on. Also because he works with children, he told me that there's you have to be careful about like growth plates and different things like that in surgery. And there are different aspects that you have to focus on if you're a pediatric sports medicine physician. He also told me that sports medicine is very much a team effort, and he works with a lot of the other doctors and talks to them to create research and treatment plans. So you have to be able to work well with others and be able to come up with ideas together. My next interview was with Dr. Don Buford. He has a private practice, so he's not affiliated with a hospital. He played professional baseball for the Baltimore Orioles, and he specialized in minimally invasive shoulder and knee surgery. It was interesting to learn more about private practices from him. He said that there was some upsides, but there are definitely downsides. One thing with private practice is that you have to fill out a lot of paperwork, and you're kind of like in charge. Basically, it's like being in charge of your own company. There's just a lot of extra things on the side that you would have to do, whereas if you worked for a hospital, they would do it for you. But one thing he said was that he can create his own hours, so he's able to like choose the surgeries that he wants to perform, and he'll just come in and do those. So it's a very more relaxed schedule, and he says he can have a lot of free time. He also was involved in sports, which was interesting to hear, as he moved on to like the professional level. And that's really where he got his love for sports medicine and orthopedic surgery. so I felt like I could relate to him through that. He also performs shoulder and knee surgery, and he also uses the arthroscopy method, and it's allows for a quicker rehab process, and it's less invasive, and it's just quicker procedures. My next interview was with Dr. Stephen Michelson. He is a general orthopedic surgeon, and he experiences a lot of diverse work days. He was a previous mentor for an ISM student, and he switched from trauma surgery to orthopedic surgery in medical school. Since he's a general orthopedic surgeon, he treats kids as well as adults, and some days he'll be working in the ER. Some days he'll just have scheduled surgeries and see patients and things like that. So he told me a lot more about specific surgeries that he performs and just about like a day in the life of an orthopedic surgeon. He was a previous mentor for an ISM student, so he kind of knew like what I was going to do with this, through this class, so it was very helpful to hear from him. And he also told me that you may think you want to do something right now, but things could always change in the future, just as he switched from trauma to orthopedic surgery. He learned, well, throughout medical school, you get to do all the different types of surgery, and so he just fell in love with orthopedic surgery, and that's what he decided to pursue in the future. My next interview was with Dr. William Robertson, and I chose him to be my mentor. He's an orthopedic surgeon, and he is a sports medicine specialist at UT Southwestern, and he's also the team physician for the Dallas Stars. I really felt like I could connect with him. He was also an athlete in college, so I feel like I can learn from him very well, and he told me a lot about just being dedicated to what you're doing, and that's how you can get things accomplished. He specializes in arthroscopic procedures, and he does a lot with different sports teams that he's a physician for, one being the Dallas Stars. And just a lot of mentor visits. We worked on my original work and final product for a majority of the time, where I got to learn all about the different tests that they conduct there and like through all of his sports teams. I got to meet with a few of his patients and who are going through the rehab process and just learn more about the surgeries that he performed on them and how their rehab process is going. And I got to meet with a few of the other trainers there, and it's been a great mentorship so far, and I'm still excited for the rest of the year. For my original work, I gathered data for the Dallas Stars with help from my mentor, and we conducted 3 different tests: the balance test, functional movement screen, and the hip range of motion. So for my project mainly deals with sports medicine and potential injuries that hockey players could face. With my mentor, I was able to collect data for the Dallas Stars using those 3 tests: balance test, functional movement screen, and hip range of motion. And there were 26 athletes that were eligible for the study, and I also did a lot of research on what these tests can conclude. So for the first test, which was the balance test, which is the machine in the left image, there are 4 parts to the test. So there's single leg balance on left leg, single leg balance on right, and then there's balance on left and right, eyes closed. So it will track your sway index, which is how far away from equilibrium you move, and the lower the score, the better. If you get a high score on a certain leg, that's an area that you need to work on. So this test will tell you a lot about stability and single leg balance, which relates to hockey because skating is comprised of a lot of that. The second test was a functional movement screen, which is a series of 7 exercise or movements, including deep squat, hurdle step, inline lunge, shoulder mobility, active straight leg raise, trunk stability push-up, and rotary stability. You are scored from a 0 to 3 on the functional movement screen, with 3 being the best, and 0 meaning that you couldn't perform the movement or exercise. And doctors will note asymmetries if there's a difference between the left versus right side of the body. And then overall you add up all the scores for each of the 7 tests to get the overall score. And if an athlete scores less than a 14, then they are 11 times more likely to sustain an injury. The FMS system will link corrective exercises to mechanically restore movement patterns. In my testing, we took out shoulder mobility and trunk stability just because we were focusing on the lower extremities, dealing with hockey and balance and things like that. For the third test, for the hip range of motion, we did 6 different tests, which include hip abduction, adduction, internal rotation, external rotation, extension, and flexion. Abduction is the degree at which the hip moves away from the central axis of the body, while adduction is the opposite, so it's towards your body. Hip extension is when the leg is fully straightened, and flexion is the opposite, so bringing your knee in towards your body. And these hip range of motion tests help show the hip movement abilities of an athlete and how they may be restricted. I was able to see how these tests work and how they're used in the sports medicine field, which was very interesting. I got to meet some of the people who we did tests on and just see how these tests are conducted and the outcomes of all of them. This is what some of the data looks like for the original work. Basically, we have the name of the player on the left side that we conducted the test for, and then we have balance data, functional movement screen, and then there's also hip range of motion, but that's not pictured here. And we basically put it into this Excel workbook so that we can compare the different scores for each person and see if there's any asymmetries that are evident throughout all the data. For my final product, I worked with the statistician to find correlations within the data that we conducted for my original work. I created a poster to outline aspects of the study, highlighting the conclusion, and then I was able to apply it to the real world. So I met with the statistician at UT Southwestern, and he actually was also the statistician for the Wisconsin basketball team. So I met with him not that long ago, just because he was finishing up with championship. And it was cool to learn more about this side of sports medicine and how just different aspects, like how math can relate to sports medicine. And he explained to me what he does on a day-to-day basis, and basically a lot of studies will be sent to him, and he'll be the one to decide if there is any significant correlation between the statistics. And then second, I created a poster using a outline on PowerPoint, which has like the introduction, results, and conclusion, and methods that we used for the test. And a lot of sports medicine students who are actually medical students right now do these for research projects. So it was very interesting to be able to do something that not a lot of younger people get to do, and it would be something that I would do in the future if I went on to medical school and conducted a study. And then to apply this to the real world, we were able to find the conclusions and which will inform other sports medicine specialists about this topic. So for the statistics, we found out that balance on the right leg with your eyes closed correlates with lunge on the right leg. And none of the other balance, hip flexion, or internal rotation measures correlated with the functional movement screen measures. So what we found out was that if you score higher balancing on your single leg right leg, then you will be able to have a higher score for the tests with lunge on the right leg. This is actually very important in hockey because when players shoot, they'll need to be able to balance on one leg as they're shooting. So they'll have to have stronger core stability, and this was what we found out definitely applied to other hockey players. This was what some of the statistics look like when I met with the statistician. Basically, it's kind of complicated to see, but once you understand it, it's easier to read. This was for the functional movement screen scores. So it has the lowest score and the highest score for each of the different tests, as well as if there was any asymmetries or something that was unique within the data. It has average scores, and then it determines an N value or P value for the correlation. And these three tests you can see are internal rotation and external rotation for right and left leg. And then this was also more of the stats. This highlighted the frequency that a certain exercise was scored. So you were able to tell or compare how many people scored well versus how many people did not on all of the functional movement screen, hip range of motion, and balance tests. So these three tests were the internal rotation for the right leg, internal rotation for the left leg, and internal rotation for the right leg. So it was really interesting to get to work with him just to see how, like, behind the scenes things kind of work, I guess you could put it that way. And the statistician taught me a lot more about this and how it really applies to studies that doctors do. And so it was great to get that experience with him. I also researched all the players that we did tests on which, if they're a right leg or a left leg shot, which will influence the conclusion that we found on the test, because if they have if they open on their right leg and they have a higher right leg balance score, that means they'll have better core stability. So the lefty shot is when the player will open to the left while balancing on the right foot, and a righty shot is opening to the right while balancing on the left foot. So majority of them were lefty shots, which means their dominant foot was their right foot. And since we concluded that single leg balance on the right leg will affect right leg lunge, then this we were able to apply this to like treatment plans and things like that. And there's a connection with the single leg balance and core stability tests that we conducted. This is what the poster will most likely look like. So the title of our study was called Influence of Single Leg Balance and the Hip Range of Motion on Functional Movement Screen Results in Elite Hockey Players. Basically, we did an introduction, methods, results, and conclusion section, just highlighting different aspects of the study. So, for example, methods, we listed that we conducted single leg balance tests on a biodex testing machine, and then the hip range of motion tests and the functional movement screen. And I included these images to show how we conducted these tests and what the stats tell. Basically, the graph shows how the correlations within the data, or what the values that we use to correlate the data. And then we have images of the different tests. And this poster should be finished, or should be, I should have the hard copy by next week, so it'll be done in time for final presentation night. And I'll be able to put it on display. And then I will give it back to UT Southwestern, and they will put it on display with all of their other posters, which is very exciting. Just an overview. So what I've learned from ISM is that you have to be very motivated and self-driven, and whatever you want to accomplish throughout the class, if you set your mind to it, then you'll be able to accomplish it. I've definitely become more professional in how I interact with other adults and things like that. Public speaking was a big thing, because before I probably wouldn't have been that great at doing this long of a speech, but ISM really helped me with my confidence and just interaction with different professionals, and getting more of a insight into the real world that other classes won't give you through this. So I just wanted to thank my mentor for being here, and he's helped me a lot throughout this year and taught me so much about orthopedic surgery and sports medicine. And I never would have thought at the beginning of the year that I would have done a project like this, so it was great to have that experience. I'd like to thank Coach Goff for pushing me to do my best and just accomplish all the goals that I've set for myself. And I'd like to thank my parents for always supporting me in everything I do. And in the future, I hope to apply everything that I've learned to be able to just accomplish all my goals in the future and take the skills and use them throughout my lifetime. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity that I've had in ISM, and I'm excited for the future. Thank you.